All right, the PlayStation Plus games for December 2021 have been announced. We have three games. We have Godfall, the Challenger Edition, which works on both the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. We have Lego DC Supervillains for the PlayStation 4, and we also have Mortal Shell for PlayStation 4. We'll get into the Metacritic scores here in just a minute. All of these games are going to be available starting next week on December 7th. As usual, PlayStation blog lists out all of the games with little trailers for all of those, which we can look at together. Additionally, and this is something that has kind of seems like it's been floating around for a while. These PlayStation Plus VR titles, which were already available, still remain available. The Persistence, Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and Until You Fall. So they were trying to do that was kind of a thing to hype up the PlayStation VR 5th anniversary, which was cool. They gave away a lot of games. I played them. I didn't really do reviews on them. It's very hard to review a VR game because it's so different and immersive, and it's hard to capture footage because it doesn't look like the way it looks in VR. It's kind of a weird thing, but I digress. What I'm not going to digress on, though, is the the games this month. So first and foremost, we have Godfall, which, if you remember, Godfall came out. Godfall was the first PlayStation 5 game. I remember very fondly there being a cover of the game and everyone like, look, it's the first ever PS5 game. It's gone gold, and everybody was all excited. And while it looked very cool and I was very interested in it, in the back of my mind, and I think everybody else's mind, we knew it was a launch game, and launch games tend to have a lot of flaws. They're usually kind of rushed out. They're not really utilizing the hardware in a way that later games do. They just, and especially in a game like this where it was one of these cross titles where it was a PlayStation 4 and a PlayStation 5 game, what real big enhancements would be on the PlayStation 5? Obviously, you're going to get things like loading speed. Typically, you're going to get a slightly better resolution. But ultimately, it wasn't a whole lot. And you could see at the Metacritic score there, not the best. I wouldn't say it was critically panned. It was not like unplayable, broken mess. It just, from what I could tell, it's basically, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the game. It's these kind of lush, fantasy-based worlds, which you play as a character. It's like a third-person action type of game, sort of like a God of War or Devil May Cry type title, where you use different medieval weapons to fight enemies, and you collect different pieces of gear to level up to progress through the gameplay. It sounded interesting. I just think it came out at a time, and this just sounds really weird to say, I don't think people really wanted this kind of game, and it just didn't really seem to push the genre much. When you think of like a launch title game, honestly, excluding the first Halo, think of a PlayStation or an Xbox launch title game that was really critically regarded, that remained for years after it came out. And this game's only a year old, obviously, because the PlayStation is only a year old, PlayStation 5 at least, right? Think of any of those games that really just stuck with you. And think about all the other games that came out as the PlayStation 5 launched and all the games we've had since then. And this one just didn't really seem to garnish a lot of excitement. But I'll definitely be checking it out. I mean, I'm never going to say no to a free game. I do like this type of genre personally. I like this medieval combat style and collecting gear and fighting enemies and parrying and dodging and using a litany of different types of abilities and spells and everything. Seems interesting to me. I guess I should also point out, before we jump off of this game, that this is the Challenger Edition. So it's got all the goodies and givvies that kind of made this the quote-unquote definitive edition of this title. Up next, we have Lego DC Supervillains, which sits at a respectable 74 on Metacritic. If you have played any Lego game, you know exactly what to expect. Tons and tons of heart and charm. Tons and tons of little bricks that you have to destroy. Puzzles, and I use that word very loosely, that you have to solve with different characters using their distinct character abilities. There's always going to be hidden little treasures to find and the ability to swap out characters. And this formula has not changed since the very first Lego game. I guess the big difference here is that not really unique to this particular Lego game, but in other previous Lego games, the characters never actually spoke. So typically all you had was them kind of grunting and, making funny little noises, which I actually really appreciated that charm. I thought that conveyed emotion in a very raw, real way. They've gone away from that though, so you will have a lot of voiceover lines now. Each character will have fully voiced cutscenes and that sort of thing, but everything else remains the same. It's got that very basic, jump and swing mechanic and collecting little bits to collect the hidden bit in the level, drop in, drop out, cooperative play with your friends. I'm sure I'll check this out just because I'm sure it's a charming game and it looks pretty. The Lego games, though, for me personally, don't hold a lot of interest anymore. And I find that with a lot of these games now, you kind of get in a situation where, I don't know, you lose interest. I feel like this is something you might like install and be like, oh, this is really cool. And you might play it for like a day or two and forget about it. But it sits at a respectable 74 on Metacritic. Last, we have the best rated game of the bunch this month. This is Mortal Shell. I knew this game was coming because it's been basically broadcast across all of the other gaming services and Game Pass, and you just know that there's like a list of games out there that just slowly kind of multiply across all of these, games and these services. So you will see this on Twitch. You will see this on, you name it, right? It's going to be there. It's just going to make the loop. This version is basically it's a Dark Souls type of game, supposed to be very punishing combat where you have to manage your resources well, punishing bosses, in a kind of a bleak fantasy world. I was always personally interested in it. I heard some of the mechanics definitely ran their course a little sooner than they should have, particularly with what the actual shell system is, where you basically, from what I can gather, you're kind of constantly changing your overall like husk of your characters. You're kind of bouncing from person to person. Still, it looks interesting. I'll definitely check this one out as well. And it got good ratings, so I would have to say that this one was definitely not bad. And this does offer, I believe the PlayStation version does come with an enhanced version. I know they recently up-resed it, where you can get a little bit better frame rate and performance and stuff. Actually, it doesn't say here. Well, and I'll eventually do my review, come back, and we can talk all about it. Not a bad month. I gotta say, I was kind of... We've talked about this before, really with E3 kind of really driving some of these phenomenal games. And then we kind of get into these months that it's somewhat forgettable. For me personally, I think Mortal Shell is something that's been on my radar for a while. I know it's already on Game Pass. I guess owning it maybe feels a little different. I really do like playing games on the DualSense controller, particularly action RPG combat-y type games. I picked up Elden Ring on the PS5 because I'm really interested in using the DualSense controller there as well, with some of the neat haptic feedback and checking out the 3D audio. So I think this is a better fit for me playing this as opposed to on my Xbox. However, obviously other people have already played it. It's been out for a year. The other two games, we'll see. We'll see. But you know what? It's not a bad list. If you want to check out this official list or any of the links to the Metacritic reviews, I will post those in the description box below. And with that, I am closing out this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.